amongst your fellow panelists?
Come on.
Oh, wow. Well, we did a practice earlier, and there's way more diversity in answers than that. I think they were talking to each other backstage or something.
No, we're wrong.
Yeah, a lot of them tempered their responses. Okay, so actually, pretty close here. Pretty much a range from 45 to 60, I saw. 65, 45 to 65, so that's a pretty narrow range. Well, let me go to you, Tom, at the end here, because I know that when you answered personally, you actually guessed 75. So why do you think that your own perspective...
Not so subtle way of saying, hey, you changed your answer.
Yeah, so when you answered for yourself, you said 75, but you thought that the panel on average would have much lower numbers.
Yeah.
So where do you think the difference is?
Oh, I think that it's really challenging because we see large-scale utility solar in a really big boom right now, but we don't see a lot of new pipeline coming on. So you sort of have that dynamic of things look great for the next few years, but then uncertain after that. And then we see the cost coming down so much that DG is absolutely exploding. And on top of that, you put policy. But it's our view at SunPower as costs come down that policymakers and utilities become much more interested, and therefore we're a bit more bullish. And we think that it's unclear between large scale or DG, but the combination of those two, we tend to be a bit more bullish.
Did anybody have a personal opinion that was much lower than Tom's thought of 75 gigawatts that they are willing to divulge?
Julie's calling me out on that.
No, I let you self-divulge.
No, I did. I had a lower amount, and it's because we're big proponents of solar and renewable at Florida Power and Light, and also our sister company. But I do see headwinds out there, and I'm very concerned. In Florida, as an example, we built 110 megawatts of solar here in the state, the only utility to do it, but we have no more authority to go forward. And I think going forward, the incentives are really set by policy, whether it's state or federal. And to what Rhone said, now is the time, in my opinion, to be worried about what's going to happen in 2016 and hitting this head on. Because if we don't, then I think it will be closer to what I said, which is 20 gigawatts. Because I think it will be very difficult to get states and the federal government to, particularly in today's focus on corporate tax reform and removing incentives, to actually get an industry that will be more robust and have that 45 to 65 gigawatts. The solar industry has benefited in recent years from having that long runway to 2016. And the predictability, the certainty that comes with that, both from a manufacturing standpoint, but also from a developer standpoint, and then from the end user standpoint. We all need that predictability. And as more uncertainty gets injected in this process, I think it will put capital on the sidelines and make it very difficult for folks like us to actually be able to deploy it.
Let's build on that thought a little bit, because it's interesting, because unfortunately the wind industry is facing that cliff right now where their production tax credit is expected to end at the end of this year. And right now they're going to go from a record year of maybe 12 gigawatts down to less than 1 gigawatt of what is expected this next year. So what would people like to see, post 2016? What gives you that certainty to allow you to scale up and continue to invest in solar, but also hopefully start to wean us off of incentives so we become more competitive in an open market?
What
As all people, yeah.
Well, as a venture capital investor, long-term view is essential, and so to have things changing every few years is never going to help you build an industry. So I don't think it's so much that the industry can't survive eventually without something like an investment tax credit, but it has to be a gradual weaning if that's what's going to happen, and it has to be a level playing field. If it's going to happen for renewables, it needs to happen for fossil, for sure.
Well, I think the cost of conventional electricity, how fast it's rising today for us in the Southern Territory here, and the cost of solar dropping as rapidly as it has, DG is really what we focused on for commercial industrial clients as opposed to utility scale solar. And we're seeing the competitive landscape being very attractive for us. Certainly the 30% is advantageous, bonus depreciation very advantageous. So as they start to go away, we've got to be more nimble and better at what we do and more efficient and keep bringing our costs down as well.
And I would just say that some of this, it feels like it's just solar that's having these issues, but this is true in any innovation cycle. I mean, those early cell phones, those early laptops, they had to get to a place where they crossed that chasm, and that's where you see the massive adoption. And we just aren't there yet. It takes a while for this to build, but signals are all over the place. When you go into a Home Depot to get a set of hammers and you come out with a solar system for your home, I mean, that's getting viral. I mean, those are the kinds of episodes that are now happening all the time that point to a different future for solar, and one that is much more based on mass adoption.
But I think Nancy also hit the nail on the head with having the glide path. You know, the production tax credits you're right, are in jeopardy right now of not being renewed. They will expire at the end of this year unless there's a change. Our sister company is the largest developer, owner, and operator of wind in the United States with about $12 billion invested in it. And we actually support a production tax credit that goes away over time. But there has to be a ramp down. There has to be that glide path so we can have predictability from all the way from manufacturing through the development and the deployment, and that people can then make rational decisions going forward. Nancy also had a good point that you have to level the playing field, recognizing that right now every form of energy has a subsidy of some form or another. And we have to figure ways to level that playing field so all technologies can compete and then be chosen based on what's best for that area.
But even if we ignore the incentives for a second and just look at the viability of solar in certain areas of the country, I think there's a number of latent accelerators already waiting to happen. If you look at certain territories in California, you have a tiered rate system that goes to 34 cents per kilowatt hour. At that rate, peak shaving already makes a lot of sense today, even at installed prices of, let's say, $5 or even slightly higher dollars per watt. Now, if you look at the current cost of installed residential systems in Europe, specifically Germany, you're paying about $2.50. There's a huge discrepancy. Now, some of it can easily be explained with economies of scales, but there's a lot that we as an industry can influence, and that's the soft cost of installations. It's customer acquisition costs, it's permitting, licensing, everything around that. There's a lot we can do to work against, currently this perception it's too expensive, bring it down, bring it to a level where it makes sense even at a rate of, let's say, 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which makes it viable in a lot of markets.
I would just add that in addition to the soft cost, the cost of capital has to come down for there to be mass adoption. Certainly tax equity funds driven by the ITC have been a wonderful way to allow leases and to avoid the upfront payment by a lot of homeowners and business owners. But still, it's a fairly expensive interest rate. And so for every point you can take off of that rate, you're going to see a coincident increase in adoption, because that's really where a lot of the savings will occur. And back to Eric's point, if we had some of the other kinds of financing mechanisms like MLPs or solar REITs, if we had some of the techniques that are available, financial instruments that are available to other sources of energy, we could get at that lower cost of capital.
Well, why don't we move on to the next question and get back into the game show fun. Rhone, you want to call the question here?
Sure. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and ask, how many of our 6 panelists do you think said that regulated monopoly utilities will exist 20 years in the future? How many out of the 6 panelists
Said that they will exist?
That regulated monopoly utilities will exist 20 years in the future?
Artist about this.
All right, pretty big range. 3 to 6.
And the
I'm
answer.
happy, actually.
The answer.
You're not out of
The answer was actually 6. Everybody believed that regulated monopoly utilities were going to be in existence in 20 years. But two of you wrote down 3. So, Pete, who do you think the other 2 were
I can guess. But we live in a world of Southern Company, and they're the 4th branch of government. They're not going away. In all seriousness, I mean, they're very, very good at what they do, and so so is FPL Energy.
So, but how might the utility, like for example, this question actually ended up on here because earlier this summer I was sitting in for Chairman Wellington's office and just chatting with him about where he thought the industry was going, and he actually said to me, he said, I think ultimately the result is going to be there aren't going to be any regulated monopoly utilities. And I thought, okay. And I said, in what time frame do you think that's going to happen in? And he said, within 10 years. And I was expecting a 20 or 30-year answer. So when I heard him say 10 years, I was really surprised. So how might utilities look? I mean, I think all of you might think they're going to exist, but I would venture a guess we probably all think they're going to look different, right? So
yeah, and I think that's it, Julie. I mean, my answer was based on the fact that we believe that transmission and distribution still are better managed by the IOUs. Certainly from a generation perspective, and being an IPP, our preference is to see much more activity on the generation side, be independent. But at the end of the day, if we really do want all of this to come together, if we want solar energy to really be tomorrow's technology, then we have to have grid stability. We have to be able to work closely with the IOUs in order for this industry to take off. And so, from my perspective, I hope that the likes of Eric and companies like Eric's get on board with what we're trying to accomplish here. We start to work together to come to some common ground on what our industries should look like together. But I think together, we will be successful.
I'm reminded of a conversation I had with the CEO of one of California's largest IOUs, and he said to me, Nancy, it took us 100 years to develop a dumb grid, so don't hold your breath on a smart grid. But having said that, there are areas, and California is one of them, where utilities will be under pressure going forward over the next 10 years, where there are options where you can use solar and pay less for your electricity than through your local utility, where your solar company can put in your charging station for your electric vehicle and can put energy efficiency into your home. I mean, we're going to see the advent of new energy, clean energy, and that's really something that nimble new entrants will be good at, where the utility is not necessarily going to have that advantage. Where they do have the advantage, that's what we talked about, is with their low cost of capital, they can help to finance this transition.
Yeah, first of all, SunPower needs to go on record here that we love the utilities since I've got 20 gigawatts of installations planned between now and 2022. But there is an obvious issue here, and the issue is distributed generation. The cost of the DG is coming down dramatically. You go see an IOU 5 years ago, and they said DG was crazy and ridiculous. And now I think they see the economics and they say, okay, how do we make this work? And the fundamental problem is we don't both make money, and that's got to be solved. And so we are on a bit of a collision course, because one of the great things about solar is you can make energy where it's used, and it's so easy to locate. And you can turn the problem on its head and say, where do you need it? Where do you have transmission capacity? Put PV in. So I think DG is becoming, distributed generation is becoming more and more economic, more and more real. But IOUs don't make any money off of DG, and it actually strains some of their assets. So the catalyst, I think, for the question is how does that get, or at least that's a big part of it. How do we solve that? We have to solve that together.
I think distributed generation is clearly a disruption to the way that utilities work today. I'm going to give you one example for an industry where this happened, one of my favorite ones. But you look at the recording industries, how long ago they started, putting music on rotating media. Remember how recent it was that somebody came up with the idea to put this into an MP3 file and store it in a little portable player that entirely disrupted this entire industry. It created completely new business models, thanks to Steve Jobs, who helped with that. I think this disruption cannot be underestimated and might go a lot faster than most people think. And it will require, also specifically for the utilities, to embrace this as a disruptive technology, come up proactively with new business models around it, rather than wait for things to happen for them.
Okay, so I think I've got to weigh in on this as the utility here, the guy with the horns on the head, apparently. So here's where I'll take exception. First off, I think it's short-sighted to generalize on utilities. So let me give you some examples, okay? We serve 4.6 million customers here in Florida. That's the third largest of anybody in the nation. So about 9 million people, half of the state's population. We have, right now, the cleanest generation portfolio of any utility in the nation. And, by the way, we have the lowest bill in the state of Florida, and a bill that's 24% below the national average. So we've proven actually that you don't have to actually be expensive in order to be clean. We've gone from 10 years ago burning 40 million barrels of oil in our fleet to generate electricity, which I'm told is more than anybody in the country, to this year we'll burn less than 1 million barrels. In 10 years, which translates into $4 billion worth of savings for our customers every single year at today's oil prices. So we've taken that by embracing new technology. We've done that not because we were asked to do it, not because we were ordered to do it. And in fact, a lot of the folks that regularly intervene on our rate cases and other matters in front of the Public Service Commission fought us on every one of those projects to convert from oil to either natural gas and even, yes, 110 megawatts of solar and other projects, expanding our nuclear fleet. I don't believe that there's any one solution. I know it's become cliche to say an all of the above, but we believe in our company that's exactly what it is. Solar plays a role in that. We're the largest producer as a corporation of wind in the nation, yet we don't produce any wind here in Florida because it doesn't make sense. The resource doesn't make sense here, and it doesn't make sense for our customers. In the end, I've got to look at what's best for our customers. And our customers tell us they want reliability, number one, and they want price, number two. And when we poll them, and we do it regularly, the emissions profile is actually, disappointingly, far down the chain. It's reliability and cost. Solar prices coming down means that we're able to start now closing that gap. But we also have to be conscious and aware that we have to maintain, we have a duty to serve, and that reliability has to be met. And we're also facing political headwinds. We have both a legislature and a governor in the state who is very focused on jobs, on economic development, and they're very focused on anything that pushes the cost of electricity up. And so those are natural tensions, and I don't think this is special to Florida, that we're going to have to work together as an industry. We're not the enemy as a utility industry. For the last 3 years, Florida Power and Light has gone to Tallahassee and tried to get solar legislation passed. And I will tell you that for the most part, we did it without a lot of support from the solar industry, with some exceptions. Tom actually wrote a letter and flew in, and a few other folks have done it, and SEPA and SEIA. But I'll tell you, we also had a lot of people within the solar industry, particularly distributed generation, who did not want to see us succeed in getting solar legislation passed because they were afraid that it was going to be all utility scale solar. I think that's very short-sighted. And because of that, unfortunately, we've gotten nothing in the state of Florida.
I just want to clarify, not to be misunderstood. I see us as partners as well. My point is that I think we need to be jointly be prepared for a change in the overall business model possibly.
Agreed.
To enable that. I don't think that utilities will go away. I think they have a very important future role. I think that the role might be slightly changing. Let's jointly get prepared for that, not to be misunderstood.
Agreed.
So let's build on this thought a little bit, because it goes back to Julia's speech, and it goes back to some of the issues we're going to discuss this next week about how do we collectively work together, right? If we've had tension and we've been pulled apart in various arenas over the last couple of years, how do we bring everybody back together? How do we ultimately create this partnership between the industry and the utilities and evolution of new business models and collect? Does it happen organically, or is there something that we should be doing right now? Tom, what are your thoughts about how do we, in this industry, pull all the pieces together before we're...
Yeah, well, I mean, we've tried the we've tried the group initiative, we've tried the top-down approach, if you will. And I believe what really has to happen is the consumer, the electricity consumer has to drive this. And the way that happens is we have to get to a point where we're an attractive product to an electricity consumer. And when the electricity consumer recognizes that if they put solar, on their rooftop, it's an economic proposition that makes sense for them, then that's where we start, because then they're going to demand that. And oh, by the way, it's a renewable product as well, so there's a feel-good component to that. And if that happens, then I think what will happen next is it will force the IPPs and the IOUs and the electricity commissions to come together and find a way to build a platform that will make sense for all of us. But I really believe that's how it has to be driven.
Can we